Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Tuesday, February 25th. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We ended up picking up a nice, easy winner in the NBA as we ended up having the over 238.5 between the Timberwolves and the Mavericks, and that game ended up finishing at 262. So, yep, even at a total of 238.5 in today's NBA, and yet it still went over by about 22 points, 23 points. It was really just wasn't even close. They ended up having 146 points combined at the half, and you could pretty much just take a nap going into the fourth quarter. So we picked up an easy winner there. I've mentioned it before. I'm going to mention it again. I mentioned it on Twitter also. The Timberwolves are a blind bet over team moving forward. This isn't even really a discussion. Every game they play should be totaled at least 240 something. Putting James Johnson at the 5 is it's a power move. They're going 5 out. They play no defense. They gave up 137 yesterday or something. This team's just awful defensively. I mean, there's no way around it. They go up and down. Towns probably shouldn't even come back this season just based on the fact that the team has nothing to actually gain. And since they keep losing, they're going to improve their draft stock. Rushing Anthony Towns off a broken wrist doesn't exactly sound ideal. So until then, I'm probably going to keep betting on the overs because they just can't stop giving up at least 130 points in a game. I said it should get into the 240s. It got into the 240s halfway through the fourth quarter, and we picked up a nice, easy winner there. But for today's play of the day, we're going to be going back to the NBA, and we actually like a player prop here, and it's going to be in a matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Portland Trail Blazers, and that game should be taking place at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And for this matchup, we actually like Jason Tatum points, and we like the over 25.5, and that line is available at minus 114 on FanDuel, and that will be the play of the day. Now, a couple of reasons why we like the spot here for Tatum. First of all, he's been on an absolute tear, and based on the numbers that you actually have here at 25.5, I just think this number is a bit too low. This number should be around 27.5, 28, just based on his recent performances. He's been absolutely cooking. He had 41 against the Lakers in the last game. He had 28 against the Timberwolves the game before that. Just going through the actual last couple of games, excluding the All-Star game, of course, because that just doesn't count. But let me just make sure about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so Tatum has gone over 25.5 in 7 of his last 8 games. And I definitely assume that this trend will continue based on the fact that Portland has been one of the worst defensive teams in the entire league. Portland is giving up 115.3 points per game. They played decently on the defensive end against Detroit, but I think we all know Detroit is just not a good team at all with all the injuries and all the trades that they've made. But they gave up 128 to the Pelicans, they gave up 111 to the Grizzlies, and they gave up 138 to the Pelicans before that. This team defensively has been a mess. And based on the fact that Boston has started to rely more on Tatum to carry the offensive load with the absence of Kemba Walker, I think you should see Tatum play well once again. The issue you have with Portland is kind of similar to what you might have noticed with the issue that they had guarding Zion. I'm not comparing Tatum to Zion, but I'm saying based on the matchup alone, you arguably might have Carmelo Anthony guarding Jason Tatum, and I think that if that's the case, I think there's going to be a long night for Portland. You also have Trevor Ariza, who could potentially guard Tatum, but Ariza's, I don't even know how old he is at this point, but he's been in the league for about, I don't even know how long, probably 16, 17 years. He got drafted in 2004, so he's been around for about 16 years, like I thought, and yeah, he's getting up there in age, and he's 34. I just don't think he'll be able to hang with Tatum. Tatum's too athletic. He's just been shooting the lights out. And I know that Boston with Brad Stevens will most likely continue to rely on him to carry the bulk now that Kemba Walker is out of the lineup. Kemba's a really good player, but he also does take a decent amount of shots away from Tatum. And I think in this spot against a very underwhelming defense, I think you should see Tatum go for at least 26 or more in this game. I think he'll probably break 30. But for that reason, I think there's value on it. Just looking at the matchup, though, there has been a lot of money pouring in on Boston. They have gone from -5 to -7. And I think that's based on the same sentiment as the fact that Damian Lillard and Kemba Walker are both not playing, and they think that Lillard is more valuable to Portland than Kemba is to the Celtics. That's 100% correct. Boston just lost by 2 on the road to one of the best teams in the league without Kemba in the lineup at all. And I think Boston should be able to win this game pretty easily. But as long as this doesn't turn into an absolute blowout early on, Tatum should be able to play at least 30 minutes or so, and I think he should be able to score at least 26 points. So the play today, once again, is going to be on Jason Tatum over 25.5 points, and that line is available on FanDuel at minus 114. Now, looking at the rest of the betting card just for some leans, I'm going to stick with the NBA. I'm going to lean to Oklahoma City minus 7. I know Chicago burned us the last time we faded them, but the Thunder are significantly better than the Wizards. Speaking of the Wizards, feel bad for Bradley Beal. Puts up 108 points in back-to-back nights, and they go 0-2. Kind of reminds me of when Booker did that a couple of years ago. I know he's the first player to actually do it in back-to-back nights with no days off since Kobe. So that's kind of interesting based on the fact that it was Kobe Day yesterday. But either or, Beal's wasting his talents, and he didn't even make an all-star team out of it. So that's just a pretty unfortunate scene there. But Oklahoma City, they just smacked the Spurs at home by about 30 in their last game. Chicago still dealing with a ton of injuries, still not great. I'll lean to Oklahoma City. They've been very solid against the spread this season. I'll lean to the Thunder there. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Denver minus the 12.5 against Detroit. I know that spread seems high, and Detroit put up a bit of a fight against Portland. They lost to Portland without Portland's best player playing. I still think Detroit's tanking. They got Thon Maker in the lineup. You're throwing in Mikhailuk in the lineup. This team just doesn't care. I think they'll struggle against Jokic. I think they'll struggle, especially now that they traded Drummond. I don't think there's any way they can contain Jokic. I think he should have a huge game. I think Jamal should have a pretty big game. I just think Denver's the deeper overall roster, and I just think that they'll win that game pretty easily. Lean to Denver on that one. Other than that, what else do I like here? I'm going to lean to Toronto, a very small lean to the Raptors here against the Bucks. I think the Bucks are the better team. I think Toronto is still the most underrated team in the entire league, because Toronto is personally my favorite team in the Eastern Conference, just actually watching them play. If you haven't watched Toronto play basketball, it's just from a purist perspective, it's exactly what you hope for a team. They move the ball so well. They play very solid defense. They won their last game against Indiana by about 40. Milwaukee's the better team, but they are coming in off a double overtime game against the Wizards yesterday, and now they have to travel internationally to face off against Toronto. That spot is brutal for me. I'm going to lean to Toronto. I would lean to Milwaukee if this was played with a day off in between, but it's not. So based on the actual lack of rest time for Milwaukee, I have to lean to Toronto. I think they should win that game outright. So lean to the Raptors there. Other than that, though, that's pretty much it for my thoughts on the NBA card. I would lean to Sacramento minus 6.5. They've played better lately, but at the end of the day, Sacramento, I know they've played a little bit better with Walton lately, but I feel like that team mostly just comes down to whether Buddy Hield can actually make shots or not. He's been very streaky so far this season. He's actually coming off the bench now because he was so bad in the starting lineup, but he has played better off the bench lately. So I think that should matter. Pay attention to the injury reports, though. You might see Draymond back in the lineup, potentially Marquise Chris, and that definitely will help Golden State potentially with the rebounding advantage. So keep that in mind. But overall, I'd have to lean to the Kings, but I don't like betting on bad teams on the road, so I'm going to pass on that one personally. Now, looking at college basketball, a lot of decent matchups tonight just based on how many ranked teams are playing. For starters, I'll start out with, I was going to say Michigan State, but I personally just dislike that team with a passion this season, so I'm going to skip on that. I'm going to start out with Ole Miss and Auburn. I'll lean to the over 142. I know the first meeting they had turned out to be an absolute nail-biter. I think this game should be close. Should see some free throws at the end of the game. Ole Miss does have the ability to score the ball, though, and Auburn has a lot of guards who just pretty much shoot threes exclusively and go up and down the court with Bruce Pearl's system. I think 142 is too low. I think both teams should get into the 70s. Lean to the over on that one. Other than that, though, I'm going to lean to Kentucky minus 6 against Texas A&M. I know that the money has come in on A&M, just based on the fact that it's an SEC team at home, and I get that you should never really bet against just pretty much any team at home this season. I mean, the road teams have been absolutely abysmal throughout the course of the year, but A&M is just having a pretty down year right now. A&M is 14-12, definitely not a great team by any means, and Kentucky very quietly flying under the radar, as Kentucky has won each of their last 6 games. They've been playing some solid basketball. I know A&M's won 3 straight. Beat Mississippi State at home. Mississippi State's pretty much fallen apart. They're still 17-10, pretty solid overall, but they were definitely a shoo-in to make the tournament a couple of months ago, and that's pretty much gone by the wayside. They beat Alabama on the road, impressive win, but Bama's also pretty underwhelming at 15-12. And they beat Georgia. Anthony Edwards is great, but I mean, that team is, Tom Crean's definitely has some work cut out ahead of him. But Kentucky's looked really good. I'm going to lean to Kentucky there, minus the 6. The issue I have with Texas A&M is that I just don't think they're going to score enough points. Texas A&M's averaging 62.7 points per game, and Kentucky's averaging 74.9. Plus, Kentucky's averaging roughly 3 more rebounds per game, and they're shooting roughly 7% better from the floor. I just don't think A&M's going to score enough points. I think Kentucky's defense is very solid, and I just think that A&M will struggle to break 60 in this game. So I think it will be tough for the Aggies to get the job done. So I'm going to lean to Kentucky on that one. Other than that, what else do I like? I'm going to lean to the under 124 between Baylor and Kansas State. I know Baylor lost at home to Kansas by 3. I know that in Waco you probably should win that one, but that really was a tough game. Azubuike is pretty much unguardable by anybody in the country. Baylor should bounce back. Kansas State stinks, and the only thing worse than their team is their jerseys, if you haven't seen them. I made a tweet about it when they were playing Texas over the weekend. One of the most hideous jerseys I've seen probably in college basketball in recent memory for me. It's a light purple with a dark purple shorts. It just looked really bad. It looked like something somebody would wear at the local gym, and I just really wasn't a fan of the jersey. Nothing to do with the game, but that was a brief rant there. It was a complete eyesore. But I just don't think Kansas State's going to score enough points. Kansas State defensively has always been pretty good, though. I think Kansas State should struggle to break 60. So for me, I think this game should finish somewhere in the realm of, I'd say, 66 to 50. I think this will be a low-scoring game, but for that reason, I'll lean to Baylor and I'll lean to the under as well. Other than that, no thoughts on the Texas Tech-Oklahoma game. Oklahoma is pretty solid at home. Texas, actually, you know what? No, screw it. I'll lean to Texas Tech. I was originally going to say Oklahoma's pretty solid at home, and they are, but we faded them over the weekend because they were in the middle of a poor run, and they got absolutely smacked by Oklahoma State. Oklahoma was on the bubble. They had some chances to give themselves a solid opportunity to make the tournament. Then they got smacked by, they lost to Baylor at home by double digits, and they got smacked by Oklahoma State. They've lost like 4 in a row. I'll lean to Texas Tech. I think they should be able to get the job done. Those are my thoughts on that. Now, looking at tennis, I know I'm going to skip hockey for tonight. Don't really have any thoughts on that. Don't want the video to be that long, but I haven't really had the time to look into it. So I'm actually going to be skipping hockey. Sorry about that, but just my thoughts. Now, looking at tennis, I know I gave out some leans yesterday. I know Fognini ended up winning the first set against Evans, and then he was up a break in the second, and then up a break on 2 separate occasions in the third. Ended up losing, but he won the first set, so if you wanted to live hedge that, you could. Didn't work out, though. I also mentioned fading Mager. He ended up withdrawing like I thought he would, so that ended up not applying. But in terms of the actual matches today, I'm going to lean to Kwon against Taro Daniel. Daniel wasn't even supposed to be in the tournament. He ended up replacing Opelka, who decided to withdraw after winning Del Rey. Kwon's actually played some really good tennis lately, and Taro Daniel, Japanese player, pretty solid, a little bit undersized, can't really serve that well, and I think Kwon is just the better overall player. So I'll lean to Kwon with the spread on that one. I think he'll win that match relatively easily. Other than that, looking at the rest of the card here, sorry, just looking through all this stuff. I'm going to lean to Lajovic. I mentioned it yesterday against Johnson. Not a big Johnson guy. He has played better lately, but Lajovic, I just think is the better overall player. He's got the one-handed backhand. He has the ability to overpower Johnson. Johnson has been struggling a bit. He did lose to Raonic in his last match, and then he ended up pelting about 5 balls into the stands. Line hasn't really changed that much. A little bit of money coming in on Johnson. I'm not really concerned by that. I think that should go to at least 3 sets. I'll lean to Lajovic. You could potentially live hedge that in the middle, but those are my thoughts. Other than that, I already mentioned Misha Zverev with some value on the spread. That has not changed. Looking at the rest of the matchups, though, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I see in terms of value. I know a lot of money's pouring on Kyrgios to get the job done against Humbert. I have to agree with that. Humbert ended up playing in back-to-back tournaments. He ended up losing in the semis to Nishioka. He got smacked 6-0 in the third. Kyrgios is always a head case, though, so you never know. But Humbert does have the tendency to make a ton of unforced errors, and I think you could see that become a trend. But also lean to the over in the Zoomer versus Dimitrov match. Dimitrov is the more talented player, but he's very inconsistent, and he does have the tendency to fall apart with his serve in matches. Zoomer doesn't have a great serve, but he does have the ability to just keep the point alive, and I think you should see that go 3 sets. So I'll lean to the over on that one. But the play of the day, once again, this video is getting a bit long. The play of the day, once again, will be Jason Tatum over 25.5 points, and that line is available on FanDuel at -114. That's going to be the installment of Scott's Selections here for Tuesday, February 25th. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.